Hello and welcome to another edition of The Rest is Entertainment with me, Marina Hyde.
And me, Richard Osman. Hi, Marina.
Hello, Richard. How are you?
Yes, I'm not too bad. Though since we last spoke, you've been to New York for a week and you're only just back, and I've recorded 30 episodes of House of Games. So if either of us falls asleep in today's episode...
or any of the listeners, I am jet lagged. You are games lagged, I think is the
Oh my God, I am
term.
House of Games lagged.
Yeah,
I don't know what time it is. Is it a Tuesday? Is it a Wednesday? Are you Sonia?
Well... I think I know now one of the guests. Okay, so this week, what are we going to talk about?
We're talking about redemption. We're talking about Will Smith's movie, Bad Boys 4. And
Bad Boys Ride or Die, to give it his official title.
I'm so sorry, Will. We're talking about whether he has, re-entered the acceptable pantheon. We're talking about Bailey Gifford. There's an awful lot of book festivals which have had to cut their ties with an investment company called Bailey Gifford because of a campaign. So there's huge problems in the book festival industry. We'll talk about that. And
we're also going to talk about political TV debates.
Yes.
Perhaps from a slightly technical thing, you've seen a couple of them now, and there's more to come.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about a little bit about the format, how people behave within those, and what you might expect in the coming ones if you can bear to tune in.
Yeah, and I'm going to, as a TV producer, I'm going to talk about who I would consider to be a good booking from the from the people we've seen.
Okay, very good. Let us begin with Bad Boys. Bad Boys Ride or Die, the fourth installment in the Bad Boys franchise, which honestly I'm shocked. The first one was in 1995.
It was a really long time ago, Bad Boys.
Yeah. Anyway, obviously we're talking. It has been a box office smash. It is finally, after a really bad, disappointing May for tentpole movies. Tentpoles, by the way, which you probably all already know, are the ones, the big movies that kind of hold up the rest, are designed to sort of hold up the rest of the schedule. Now, Bad Boys, for reasons, was not regarded as a tentpole, and in fact, people were very unsure how it would do because, as we all know, Will Smith slapped Chris Rock at the Oscars. It was slap heard around the world.
Yes.
And it was unclear, really, whether someone who, despite going on to win an Oscar later that evening, we're going to talk about how the whole thing has unfolded.
Talk about redemption. That was quick.
That was quick. And how this was by no means guaranteed. It's a real surprise to some people that this movie's done so well, and it's done so much better than a lot of things that were expected to do far more. And it's done so much better than a lot of things that were expected to do far bigger business. So I suppose we're not really talking about business this week. We're talking really about the route that his publicist has crafted back from that moment. Can I just mention as a sidebar, though, having talked about the movie opening, do you know, I was in New York last week, as we've discussed. In the Bronx, there is now only one movie theatre.
No way.
In total. So nearly 1.5 million people live in the Bronx.
Wow.
And I was going to watch it before we went to the Yankees game. And I was thinking, maybe I'll catch it up there. And there is only one movie theatre in the Bronx.
That's crazy. This publicist, is it a publicist who stuck with Will all the way through?
Now, we saw her on the night. Her name, well, we didn't see her, but she was there on the night. Meredith O'Sullivan Wasson. Every single... remember where he was sitting?
Names much.
Yeah. He was sitting within slapping distance, clearly, of the stage.
Yeah.
So everyone in that theatre after the incident happened, first of all, you know... why was it such a horrible moment? Obviously, it's an unbelievably weird and ridiculous thing to do. After all these, he was finally going to break his best Oscar drought and he was going to win it. But I think part of it is it's so complete, the kind of destruction of everything, because I know I talk about persona a lot, but what we like to think of our leading actors, not our character actors, but as versions of the characters they play. We want them sort of to bring that same persona out every time. And Will Smith's persona was that he was breezy, he was charming. You know, he refused to swear in any of his rap songs.
Yeah. To me, he's like a kind of a Fresh Prince.
Yeah, and I suppose the other thing you'd think, as in the more serious end of the roles he played, obviously there's a continuum, that kind of persona, is that he was very disciplined. So when he gets on stage and says, "Get my wife's name out of your fucking mouth," you're swearing now, okay? And it's like the sort of live abortion of all of it. And then this woman, this publicist, all the way through in every commercial break after this had happened, could be seen by everyone else in the theatre going up and having sort of a huddle with him as to what on earth to do, because it's happening. And every publicist you will talk to will say, I was absolutely transfixed, and all I was thinking was, thank God that is not my client.
I mean, it's essentially exactly what Rishi Sunak's publicist was doing the day after D-Day.
Yeah.
It's that kind
it's
of
that level of
terror.
Yeah, what on earth, I relish the challenge of coming back from this from a publicity point of view. Anyway, crucially, neither his agent nor his publicist, who are sort of managers as well, got rid of him.
Mm-hmm.
CAA are the agents, Creative Artists Agency, but everyone calls them CAA. But it was a moment of shell shock. I also think what was quite funny that night was that the rest of the audience, how they behave when they don't have their publicist with them to tell them what to do. Because don't forget, he gave some ridiculous speech when he won the Oscar in which he didn't apologise to Chris Rock. And everybody stood up and gave him a standing ovation. It's like, guys, This is, by the way, just to let you know, this is going to look really bad tomorrow. And I'm sorry that you didn't have your helpers with you to tell you what to do. But your instinctive reaction, like, have I just seen a moment of redemption? Yeah, it can't happen this quickly. Yeah. This is too big for this.
Yes, it's tricky if you are an A-lister, because your instinct, of course, is when someone else wins an Oscar. You've been taught over the years the thing not to do is be angry. The thing not to do is stay sat down and look like you're cross. And so that's the only thing that's been drummed into them over hundreds of years. So suddenly Will Smith's up there go, hold on, when someone hits someone, I have to look cross. Oh, when someone wins an Oscar, I have to look happy. And it just couldn't compute. So they just went, you know what? I'm going to go happy. I'm going to choose happy because actually I look better happy.
Also, a 2-hour redemption arc story is the other thing. They've only been in those sort of things, so they know that Act 3 is redemption. So they think, I've been sitting here about 2 hours now,
so
and
maybe
he seems to be saying sorry. So I guess this is the moment where we all just say, yes, amazing, congratulations. You've won World War III like in Top Gun. It's that moment in the sort of 3-act structure. Anyway, he does. The apology should be very, very quick in these situations. I'm sort of talking now through the publicist tool, but the apology should be very quick.
Yeah.
His was not really quick enough. It certainly wasn't. He should have done it there and then to Chris Rock, which he didn't, and he did it later to Chris Rock. His publicist said to him, don't go to the Vanity Fair party, which is the famous big party after the Oscars. He went to the Vanity Fair party.
Well,
yeah, he was dancing to getting jiggy with it with his Oscar, and it's like,
come on, man.
Okay, again, this is going to look very bad tomorrow.
For me, honestly, the one good thing about if I was Will Smith there would be thinking, oh, great, I don't have to go to the party.
Yeah, exactly. I could just go home and have it. Anyway, so they get through the immediate period of it. He's banned by the Academy and also says, I've resigned from the Academy, and everyone tries to make it better, but the period of silence follows. Then what happens is that later that year, a movie comes out, but they already had it in the can before, which is a slave movie called Emancipation. And he does one interview, I think, with The Daily Show, which was presented, I think, by Trevor Noah at the time. But it's quite difficult doing an interview because you're going to be asked about the thing. Yeah,
again, it's very Rishi.
Now, the wife, who is obviously Jada, who is obviously involved in all of this, the next sort of big thing to happen in the redemption arc, which I think this is a bit of a misstep for me, she says in 2023, oh, by the way, we've been separated since 2016. There are a whole load of plot lines as to why this thing happened. A lot of people, and I must say that of course the Smiths deny it, think that there's some sort of coercion angle, and that because she gave him a really dirty look, that he's really under her thumb. She's done really odd interviews before where she's talked about her infidelity, and he has to just sort of sit there. This was for me a bit of a deviation from the old redemption arc, because it just makes you think, yeah, these guys are weird, aren't they? I mean, we don't really like weirdos in life. We like kooky people, but this is weird,
Yes, be kooky.
Be kooky, be unusual.
Like if you're our neighbours, we go, they are a lot of fun. Yeah. Not, oh my God, our neighbours are an absolute bin fire.
Our neighbours are really, really weird.
Yeah, they literally set the bins on fire the last recycling day.
So at this point, Netflix said that they were going to pause a movie they had with Will Smith, and they would wait to see what Sony did with Bad Boys. But anyway, Sony do go ahead with Bad Boys. But I should say that King Richard, by the way, the movie where he played Richard Williams, Venus and Serena's father, was a flop. Now that is quite... So remember, the money is always, sadly, when we talk about Hollywood, that as long as he keeps making money for them, as has happened this most recent weekend, it will be roughly all right. Yeah. But King Richard was a flop. So it didn't look great. But then, so we don't hear from him again for a while. But then there's this thing, which I think we talked about before on the podcast, called the Red Sea Film Festival, which is in Saudi Arabia.
Yes.
And various people were paid to go, and Will Smith got paid about $1 million to go to the Red Sea Film Festival.
That's essentially like the movie star version of being paid to go on Celebrity Big Brother.
Yeah, it is. It's but much easier. And he was paid $1 million, and he had to have an interview, but with a very sort of tame Saudi journalist. I mean, obviously, all journalists in Saudi Arabia have to be tame.
I think I would be tame.
I'd be super tame. I don't want to leave in several body bags. Anyhow, and he did this interview in which he was asked all the questions. He did the right thing. Mention legends who still love you. There was a quote. Quincy Jones has always made himself available.
Oh my God!
He wants me to win as a human. He has devoted me as a human, not just as an artist.
Oh.
And then you have to sort of create I don't want to say you can't be humble, because I don't think he's humble. You have to create a sort of simulacrum of humility.
Yes.
So he said, I love puzzles, I love problems. Yeah, I started making my own problems. Life was going too well. And he said...
so he's saying essentially the slap was like a Sudoku.
Yeah, or like when Dave Stewart had his appendix taken out, he had that thing, Paradise Syndrome, you know. Only celebrities get it. I think he didn't need his appendix out. And he had it taken out because everything was sort of too perfect.
So he could feel something.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to speculate on... But it's called Paradise Syndrome. So, and anyway, he says, I don't need others to applaud me for me to stay focused on my mission. I want you to feel good. And at the same time, I am deeply human. And I am in the process of perfecting my virtue. I love the way celebrities talk. It's just fantastic.
He's in the process of perfecting his virtue.
Yeah. If he was on any American interviewer, by the way, they'd be like, sorry, can we... I don't know what that means. You slap someone live on stage. Has Chris Rock reached out to you? Anything, all of this sort of stuff. But anyway, and then someone in the audience said, what do you want to do next? And someone in the audience shouted out, a movie with Denzel. And he said, yeah, a movie with Denzel in Saudi. So, yeah, I know. So he is... But he's talking about having a mission, blah, blah, blah. All of that is water testing.
Yes.
So if that goes wrong in Saudi Arabia, if he can't make it there, then maybe he can't make it anywhere.
It's his
kind of publicist is thinking, he's sort of got away with that. Obviously, we have the internet, so we all know what he said, and it's reported in all the trade papers and all the other newspapers.
And is his publicist still behind all of this? So his publicist is
the same. They're building
campaign.
the path back.
Yeah. So they're in tandem, the two of them here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the most recent thing he did is but then he performed Men in Black at Coachella. So what he's really I know it really is that bad, that festival. It does sound like the most cursed place on earth. Anyway, so what he's saying is, I'm still the same guy. So in a weird way, Bad Boys 4, Ride or Die. Ride or Die is the crucial bit, because that persona thing. Yeah, colon ride or die. But that persona thing, which is saying, in this movie, he has to become an outsider again. Without spoiling the plot, him and Martin Lawrence are outsiders again, almost outlaws.
Okay,
and they have to work out what really matters and to kind of make their way back. So in a funny kind of way, he can say, yeah, I'm still playing that guy. I'm still, you can continue as a star to deliver that message about yourself.
He's an underdog in the movie,
And in case you didn't get it, he says things like, my fans are ride or die. And then the Sony...
My fans are ride or die?
Yeah, they're my ride or dies.
Is that two people?
Yeah.
Which one are you? You ride or you die?
Sony chief, Tom Rothman, is a real life ride or die, he says. He was messing with me when nobody was messing with me. That's my dude. Yeah, he's so corporate. He is so corporate. Chief. Yeah, Sony chief Tom Rothman is my ride or die. He was messing with me. I don't think the head of a studio messes with one, does one?
I just had to do my acknowledgements for the new novel, and I've mentioned the absolute heads of Penguin Random House. They're lovely. But now I wish I'd said they're my ride or die.
Yeah, you should say these are my ride or dies. Well, it's all right. You've got something in the can for next time. Now, his agents at CAA are now calling lots of other studios. They're ready to... They're now on the basis of... because they could see from the tracking that Bad Boys was getting away from well. And his other upcoming projects are hilarious. He is trekking to the North Pole for Disney.
Is he?
Yeah, for a document.
Okay.
I mean, yeah. But, again... this is a form of persona thing. I am doing an almost literal penance. I'm making some kind of pilgrimage. What can't be fixed? This is what's worth talking about, because I've made it sound like, they've plot, and they have done well here.
Yeah.
You can never say in any trailer, Academy Award winner Will Smith, because every time Stacey says one thing, oh yeah, that was the thing we slapped Chris Rock.
Yeah.
So sadly you lose that. The weirdness is out now, but
Yeah.
it didn't harm Tom Cruise that much when we found out that Tom Cruise was mega, mega weird.
Yeah, and a Scientologist and jumping up and down on the
Sofas.
sofa on Oprah
And when he lost when he got rid of his publicist, he'd kept all of that very much out of the way for quite a long time. Although that same management company, that same sort of publicist, they also represent Higher Ground, the Obama's production company. He's always really wanted to play Obama. I feel like that's still not going to happen.
That may not happen.
That may not happen.
Yeah.
But another part of that persona, probably the final part I'm going to mention, is that, which was very successful in his biggest movies, is that he was a guy who kind of got knocked down in this case. Even the knock, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
But he was able to deal with setbacks. You know, if you look at things like, I don't know, The Pursuit of Happiness, which was maybe his best role, or I Am Legend, or, you know, and so he can still retain that little bit of it to say, even though the setback was entirely, rather than, oh, I'm the last person who survived an apocalypse. Yeah, you created the apocalypse, okay? So, yeah, well done for surviving yourself.
If we could sum it up, I would sum it up by saying, if I was Will Smith, this is a story all about how my life got turned upside down. Am I right? I mean, the clues were all there from the beginning.
You see, well, then there you go.
Yeah.
It sort of still fits, albeit in a kind of wonky and weird way.
Now, my part in the Chris Rock debacle is that my mate I was saying, go on, Will. He's got your wife's name in his mouth. You're going to take this and taking that?
He will remove his wife's fucking name from your mouth.
Yeah, from his mouth. Go on. Go up there. No one will mind.
Yeah.
You got Bad Boys 4 coming out. It's all right.
Yeah.
No, when I was, I went on Graham Norton, and on Graham Norton, you never know who else is going to be on. So you're sort of sitting there going, I wonder who's going to be on. And then literally the day before they go, oh, Will Smith is on. And you're like, oh, Will Smith. This is pre-slap.
Yeah.
Okay, so he was
one of the biggest stars in the world.
Untouchable.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking, wow, Will Smith is on. That's cool. And then right at the last minute, you find out where you're seated. And I was sat next to Will Smith. So I was sat next to Will Smith. Not only that, he is not one of those people who just sits there, does his bit and, you know, just kind of leans back. He was so engaged with everyone, backstage, on stage, telling stories, laughing at others. Chris and Rosie Ramsey were on as well. We were all like kids in a sweet shop. Like, we'd tell stories and Will Smith would be like really laughing, and we go, oh my god, Will Smith really thinks we're funny. And because of course he was very giving in that way. And I thought, well, this is amazing. I'm mates with Will Smith now. And it was, I think, 2 weeks later then he went and slapped Chris Rock and was persona non grata. I thought, Will, we literally just met. I cannot believe it.
You bought at the very top of the market.
I bought at the very exactly. But I hadn't realised it was a doer-upper.
No,
right?
No.
I thought it was ready to move in. I thought it was a turnkey. I could just, but
turnkey friendship.
A turnkey friendship, and then 2 weeks later, there
you
he
were
went.
having to distance yourself from him.
Yeah, I was going to go. Listen, we were friends.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, we were developing a relationship, but I haven't spoken to him in like 10 days.
He's perfecting his virtue.
Yeah. So it was. I had 2 weeks of being incredibly excited. I had to rap in front of him.
Had to.
Had to is strong. Chose to. I did a like when I was at school in our assembly. I did a rap version of the Nativity. I wrote it and performed it. Yeah. Yeah. So I told the Graham Norton people that, and they were like, oh, well, we got Will Smith on. So yeah, I had to rap the Christmas Nativity in front of Will Smith. Perhaps actually that's what finally flipped him.
Yeah.
Perhaps he was fine, and then he listened to me talking about my rap version of the Nativity, and he went, do you know what? I've just got to lash out. And I can't lash out here.
He kept a lid on it for so long.
He was like
2 weeks later, he's going to blow.
Yeah, honestly, as he was stepping up to Chris Rock, I bet he was thinking about my line about Pontius Pilate being a publisher, which was because he got crucified by the press. Jesus in my story.
Yes. Oh, did he?
Yeah,
Very good. Yeah. Okay. Well,
Thanks.
then maybe that. How brilliant! I'm afraid we might have to do a special on it one day. Okay, so I think it obviously to sum up, I suppose some things have been lost, but he's done pretty well. The crucial thing is he's making them lots of money.
So that's the thing. If Bad Boys 4 had done 20 million less, it would be a very different story. So actually, and the reason it's done
even
a lot,
20 million less, by the way, I don't think it would be that bad. It cost 100 million. Obviously, the marketing they've spent a lot on. And it is an old-fashioned marketing campaign, by the way. When I was in New York, I saw so much stuff for that, and the other thing I saw for TV was just everywhere was House of the Dragon, and those are the two things.
But it's interesting why it did well, and it's interesting that when someone is disgraced in the public eye, a couple of things happen.
He was disgraced, not cancelled. I think that's crucial. He was in the liminal area.
I think that, and whatever the noise around it is, somewhere in the back of things is what actual people think and what people who go to movies think. And I think perhaps they didn't think his crime was quite as big as the culture at large thought it was.
Maybe, Richard, they can separate the art, Bad Boys 4, Ride or Die,
from the artist, The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Yeah.
But the other thing is interesting when you're talking about his agent and his publicist staying with him, which has obviously been a big deal, is quite often when people are cancelled, certainly in the industry I'm in, television, if the people in the industry think it's a slightly unfair cancellation, then actually their road back is slightly quicker. If there's a cancellation and people in the industry go, even if someone's not prosecuted or anything, and people in the industry go, that's about time, then that road to redemption is impossible. So I suspect
if the professionals drop you,
if the professionals just go, do you know what? This has been, they're absolutely right. We don't like working with this person anyway. This is absolute just desserts. We are not going to fight for this person. Whereas perhaps Will had people around him where they were going, look, what he did was terrible. We've worked with him a long time. We sort of understand where it came from. We love him. We respect him. And he'll have to sit on the benches for a little while, but we'll look after him and support him. I think sometimes that's the difference between why some people are redeemed because people think they're worth redeeming, and why some people aren't redeemed, which is people are going, good riddance to bad rubbish.
Yes. We are going to now talk about book festivals, and which are in peril in lots of ways after Baillie Gifford, who's one of their major sponsors, has sponsored about 8 book festivals, also many art galleries, and the biggest non-fiction prize in the UK, have either cut ties with the festivals or the festivals have been forced to cut ties. Can you tell us a bit more about why?
I don't know how much cut through this has had in other industries, but it's huge in the book world. And now around the country, we have these book festivals. Cheltenham is a big one. The Hay Festival is a big one. Edinburgh Festival. They don't make a huge amount of money for anybody. They're almost all of them are run as charities.
Just quickly, what happens at a book festival? There will be events. Authors will be interviewed on stage. There'll be lots of panel discussions. There will be lots of sort of children's outreach programs. And obviously the big names, if you go to a book festival, you're going to sell out your whole tent and everyone's going to be, dying to get a ticket. But there are loads of smaller things that people like you going enable to happen.
It's fairly delightful, is the truth, a book festival. If you've got one in the local town, people really treasure them. Yeah, as you say, you go along, there's sort of tented villages, there's 5 or 6 different venues. There's almost always outreach programs where local schools come in the week before and kind of, people come and speak to them. Loads of panels where new authors can come along and talk about stuff. There's signings, there's all sorts going on, outreach, education, and they're little kind of grenades of empathy which are sort of dropped in the countryside every now and again.
And festivals of ideas, because inevitably you're talking about lots of things that are involved in sort of non-fiction topics, as well as people talking about stuff, just the creative art.
Yeah, and there's always some mad thing that you never would have thought of, and you go along and see like something about the geography of the brain, and you're like, oh my God, that's the best hour I spent before people talking about it. So those have always gone on. They need sponsorship, of course, because they do deficit fund. They do make sure they've got outreach. They do make sure that there's some tickets are cheaper and more available. And that, as you say, if you're Ian Rankin and people like that, you go along and do these festivals. 1, because they're fun and they're nourishing, but 2, because that's a good way of that festival making a lot of money.
Yeah,
because they can sell out a big tent for good money, and that money then funds everyone else coming to that festival. So these are wonderful things. Now there's a pressure group called Fossil Free Books, and they targeted Baillie Gifford because Baillie Gifford has some investments in fossil fuels.
A very small percentage, by the way, compared to most other investment funds. Baillie Gifford are pretty, you can see from the fact that they sponsor all these festivals and these prizes, they're pretty philanthropic. I should say that every person who I spoke to who works in book festivals has loved their partnerships with Baillie Gifford and think they're so engaged.
Yeah, and Fossil Free Books are saying, well, look, do invest in. They do have some money. I think 2% of the money that they invest is in fossil fuel companies. So they launched a campaign to boycott Baillie Gifford and to say to authors, you must either A, boycott these festivals and not turn up, or B, if you do go there, to use it as an opportunity to protest. And they also wrote to lots of other authors and said, just so you know, if you do speak at this festival, we can't guarantee there won't be a protest at your event. But
I should say that the things they're against are, sorry, just to get back to the Omni cause for a second, fossil fuels, genocide and colonial violence. I mean, you know, saying to an author, are you for or against genocide? I'm going to break news to you, I'm against it.
They are.
They also criticise Baillie Gifford for investing in various companies like Nvidia, Amazon. Nvidia make the chips.
The chips are the biggest company in the world now.
They're the biggest firm in the world, and they say that the Israeli military uses some of these services. Well, I mean, some of these authors, their book, you know, your books are all on Amazon. You're invested in these things, but anyway, so the fossil fuels, genocide, and colonial violence
is what they're against.
Yeah.
So what happened is, of course, they targeted Baillie Gifford. They targeted these festivals, and they said, no, Baillie Gifford must talk to us. And what Baillie Gifford said was, no, we're going to pull out of every single one of these festivals because and some of the other festivals said, no, we're pulling out of dealing with Baillie Gifford.
But they all issued these incredibly regretful statements saying, we don't want to do this. We feel, and I have seen a lot of criticism of the festivals for not standing up to this sort of collective that no one really knows who they are. And by the way, I haven't heard of any of the people involved in them. But it's quite difficult if you are trying to say, well, no authors will come and we're going to collapse without. It's better that we still continue to exist. But that's how far they pushed them, to a sort of existential point.
Yes.
Where statements that they'd issued 2 weeks ago in the case of something like Edinburgh felt it couldn't hold 2 weeks later, and therefore they had to cut ties with them. And Baillie Gifford are headquartered in Scotland, and so and festivals, we should say, have already collapsed. Other ones have gone. There was one in Bristol called Bristol Ideas. There was one in Glasgow, I Write. These are all gone. So
yeah, they're all operating on a shoestring. So here's the thing: I'm very comfortable with people campaigning against fossil fuels. Okay, and I think everyone is fairly comfortable with that. What the fossil fuels people were saying was a couple of things. They're saying the idea of this is we're raising the issue, and therefore Baillie Gifford will have to come and talk to us, and we can talk to them about divesting, which means, you know, taking their money out of fossil fuels. So that was their strategy. Their strategy is not let's collapse these festivals. Their strategy is we need to get the attention of Baillie Gifford. We can then negotiate with Baillie Gifford. Baillie Gifford, of course. They said, in fact, Andres Odorico, who's one of the guys, said, the aim has never been to target festivals. It has been about using these festivals' very unique relationship with this investor, right? Festivals do not have a unique relationship with this investor.
It's so fatuous, I can't even believe it.
They said they're going, and then Baillie Gifford pull out, so there's no money left, and fossil-free books are saying, oh, I mean, they must be rubbing their hands with glee. They've just walked away without answering any questions. You go, but of course, that's what they were going to do. I mean, there's absolutely no way that wasn't what's going to happen. And another fossil-free books thing is saying this is not about purity; it's about strategy. Okay. Now, by the way, if it was
what a great strategy.
If it was about purity, I'm all behind it. We have that discussion. If it's about purity and this is what you're saying, then I'm all behind it. If it's about strategy, it's a terrible strategy because these festivals need Baillie Gifford a huge amount more than Baillie Gifford.
I'm not behind it if it's about purity.
Needs the festival. Well, the purity thing is interesting because if it is about purity, you have to follow that through. And if you're against Baillie Gifford, there's a number of other organisations you do have to be against. By the way, you know me, I will never see a fence without wanting to sit on it. Okay, but I'm happy to listen to all sides of this, but all of the people I've seen talking about it all have their books on Amazon. I've checked all of it this week, every single one of them. And Amazon, by the way, is one of the companies they want Baillie Gifford to divest from. And I haven't yet seen, I'm sure there will be an argument they have. I haven't yet seen what their argument is for it being okay that their books are on Amazon. One of the guys,
or made with paper, which is, of course, a fossil fuel product. Books are a fossil fuel product.
But Andres Odorico, who's one of the who's an Edinburgh-based writer, who's got a new book out in July. But he's doing a tour. He's doing a reading at Waterstones, Waterstones are owned by Elliott Investment Management, or largely owned, which is a big sort of hedge fund, who, if you want to look into their accounts, you'll find them very similar to Baillie Gifford.
Or they've got a lot more. They've got a lot more than
Listen,
2% in these things.
I'm trying to be even-handed.
Yeah.
And so, if you do want to have some sort of purity of thought about fossil fuels and genocide, you have to take your books off Amazon if that's what you're asking Baillie Gifford to do. You can't go to Waterstones. Now, most authors, the world of authors is quite a thoughtful bunch. It's quite a non-confrontational bunch, I would say. And the one reason that I do sit and listen to fossil-free books is I think probably the world of literature probably doesn't do enough, because we sort of have our cake and eat it a little bit, which we're seen as lovely and artsy and lefty and, everything's great with the world. And actually you're working in an industry, HarperCollins, where lots of people are, that's owned by the same people that own the Fox Corporation. Lots of people go out to the book festivals in the UAE. Now, I know enough authors to know that everyone has their own individual morality and they have reasons why they would do those things. And we have to respect people's I'm going up to do the Edinburgh Book Festival and I'm very comfortable doing it. I spoke to a huge amount of people who, in the book world this week, just about this, because it is a huge thing in the world of books. And I've spoken to people from both sides. I spoke to the most interesting person I spoke to was someone who had signed the fossil-free books declaration and joined the boycott of that. And this person said, yeah, I signed up to it because I heard of it. I thought this sounded good. The more I looked into it and the more I understood what their tactics were and the more I looked at what they were saying, I took my name off that list. And that person said to me, Baillie Gifford, and this, I think, chimes with my view, to me, Baillie Gifford sponsoring these festivals is like our very own personal windfall tax. That's essentially saying, I understand capitalism exists. I understand hedge funds exist. I understand there's a world out there which I have very little control over, the world of money. If there's any way I can get some of that money and use it to spread empathy, and I can use it to spread ideas, and I can use it to get kids reading, then that's the thing I'm comfortable with. And that's a morality. It's a morality that I share. And I think fossil-free books, genuinely admire the passion of it. I genuinely admire this thought that, the world is burning, we need to do something about it. I think it's the wrong way to go about it. I think almost every single writer thinks that as well. But it does mean, I think, that next year almost all of these festivals will probably die. Well,
I'm sorry, I don't admire anything about it. I don't admire anything about them. And one of the things that I particularly don't admire is the suggestion that everything is politics and that art is the same as politics and that all art, by the way, some art is political and much art is born of its time and therefore can have that sort of relationship to politics. But art and politics are not the same. And if you insist that all art must be politicised and all artists must make statements all the time, then what you are essentially wishing for is a contraction of the human experience, a contraction of human possibility, because you're saying these things essentially semantically map onto each other. This is nonsense, okay? Art can exist just for its own sake. The pleasure of these things just for their own sake must be allowed to exist. When I think of these people, I think of them and I think they're the sort of people who had been saying to Shakespeare, do you, William Shakespeare, condemn Elizabeth I's brutal suppression of the uprisings in Ireland? Do you? Why haven't you said anything? Why haven't you signed a letter saying anything? If you don't sign it, William Shakespeare, then this new play of yours, The Taming of the Shrew, we're going to protest this. Is it any good? And I just feel that not everything has to involve someone saying, and they say, oh, you've got the luxury of that because you don't live in Gaza or whatever. This is, I'm afraid, throughout the whole of human history, awful things have been happening. But art must be allowed to exist in and of itself, and it doesn't have to answer any questions, and people should be allowed to come and listen to by the way, anyone you talk to at these book festivals say, if you want to hear people talking about these issues,
100%.
The best place to hear them is at these festivals. The thing that Baillie Gifford's funding at something like the Cheltenham Festival was being primarily directed towards now is the outreach programmes for children. They will now go.
Yeah.
Okay. So these people have not thought anything through. And also they are that sort of modern thing that everything is politics and everything must be politicized is limiting, and it is a contraction of the mind. And it cannot be, things must be allowed to exist in and of themselves and not have to be politicized.
And it's well said, but also they're saying, well, one way of replacing this funding would be, this is our way of, we can push for more public funding of the arts. And you think, well,
good luck with that.
Luck.
Good luck with that.
I mean, have you not seen that horse bolting down the road a long time ago?
And what people don't realise is that the costs of these things since the pandemic have gone up 40%. I've spoken to people a lot about costs this week, so I think it's quite interesting. Yeah. And sadly, because so many sort of, lighting and tech and marquee companies went out of business during the pandemic, the cost of the ones that remain are 40% higher. Now, these festivals have not passed that on in ticket pricing because they're acutely aware that there's a cost of living crisis. And so they are now cut to the very, very bone, even with this funding. Without it, they are all immediately in crisis. And that has been the effect of this. And it is the most stupid and I hope a galvanising campaign, because a lot of people can see how completely self-defeating this was. And I tell you something about those fossil-free books people, they've seen what happened, but because they're so indulged and so spoiled and so weak, they will not apologise for what they've done. They say, oh, well, we're now, they've tried to put it onto Baillie Gifford. No. This is the result. These are the consequences of your actions, and you should face them. If you haven't got the strength to face that, then I don't know what they're talking about. Any form of resistance on anything else, because they should have the courage to see what they've done.
It's interesting because I thought it's a useful place here because the sort of people that listen to this. If there's people, I was going to say, who are high up at big companies, companies who do spend money on the arts or spend money on charities, then there's a space here that you can spend some money and do an enormous amount of good. However, I don't know that I would recommend it in the current climate because
who would be pure enough?
Because they're going to say, well, we'll say it, and then someone will be rooting through our
they'll find out that whoever ITV are invested in this, or their pension is handled. I mean, a lot of people's pensions are handled by Baillie Gifford.
If you really want to dig down, and also just they're putting things on Twitter, they're putting things on Instagram. And you think, look, I get it, and I know they will have worked out a way of saying yes, but. But that yes, but is not coming across in their public.
And other people get to say yes, but.
Yeah, exactly.
You're not the only people who get to say yes,
well,
but.
I'm certainly saying yes, but I'll be going to Edinburgh, and I'll always go and do these festivals, and it's if companies do want to come in, there's an enormous amount of artists and writers who will support you and will come over the top and support you as well. Because at the moment the narrative's being controlled by someone else.
I should also say that almost all the people from all the different festivals that I spoke to said if there would be a way found for Baillie Gifford to come back into partnership, and maybe Baillie Gifford have been quite surprised by the reaction to this, which has been pretty strong in their favour. So maybe there is a way back. Maybe there can be some sort of diplomatic solution. I don't know, but it would be good to think that something could be salvaged.
Yeah, certainly if Baillie Gifford are listening and the big festivals are listening, I'm sure people can get around a table and talk. Yeah, because they're genuinely wonderful things, these book festivals. There's not many things that are just purely wonderful.
And as you say, I think authors now, many of whom perhaps, didn't think too hard about signing their letters, now understand much more the stakes involved. Not that they just didn't perhaps think it all through, but now they've seen the consequences. Maybe there can be support from that front too.
And the thing this week that'll be interesting to see is Latitude. There's an awful lot of pressure now being put on Latitude because of their ties to Barclays. And so for exactly the same reason, people are being asked to boycott. And people I spoke to in the last week, they're all talking amongst themselves saying, I don't really want to boycott in this way. I understand that what's happening, but it feels like this isn't the best thing to do. So it'd be fascinating to see what happens with that. But it's one of those stories that definitely watch this space.
Watch these Puritans, because that's what they are. They hate culture, really, and they really do hate culture. I don't believe they've got any particular ties to it. And what they really like is to tear things down. Let me see you build something, because I don't think they build anything. They're wreckers, these people. They're Puritans and wreckers, and that is my final word on this subject. I'm sorry, Richard. Yeah. I'm sorry. I feel quite strongly about that one.
So what you're saying is take Baillie Gifford's name out of your mouth.
Out of my fucking mouth.
Out of my...
Yeah.
Okay, I gotcha. For a bit of light relief, shall we talk about the general election?
Yes. The general election, the TV debate.
We've
now had two, one between Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer, and that one of those weird 7-person ones where Sunak and Starmer had their proxies. But we are going to see another between Sunak and Starmer. Now, historically, the audience really drops for the second one of these, which I can,
Yeah.
I think we've all got a huge amount of sympathy for. It's a bit like me when a new Star Wars series comes out. I'm like, okay, Book of Boba Fett, I'm one and done. I see what that is. Yeah, I don't need to see the rest of it.
But it's like in boxing, if there's a fight and it's really boring, people don't go, we need a rematch. Like, never. It's only if a fight is great. And it was a very, very boring piece of television by design, really. There's nothing there, is there? You got two people who are not there. Neither of their strength is as a on-screen performer.
No,
really, Sunak and Starmer. It is not a fun watch. I quite enjoyed the 7-person one, which we'll get onto, but it's a hiding to nothing for both of them being in that studio. Neither of them wants to be there on stage with each other. I mean, Sunak doesn't want to be in this election at all. He doesn't want to be anywhere.
No,
we know that. He just wants to fly home from wherever he is at any given time. So I always watch. It's terrible, really, because I listen, I'll put it on the table. I care about the future of our country, but I really, really care about television. And all I'm thinking when I'm watching those debates is, oh my God, the poor producers. I actually met the producer of the Sunak Starmer one in the lift in the studios in Manchester, because we're filming House of Games just around the corner. And I was thinking, man, I wouldn't want your job today. I'd rather be producing House of Games today than having to do that show where everyone is going to tell you did a bad job. Nobody is going to give you any credit for anything you're doing. You're working with two bits of talent who, if you were making a TV show,
of talent.
You would not work with. You've got nothing, really, and it's a huge gig. And I thought they did a perfectly good job. The set looked nice. I mean, it's
two Barney Walshes. It's two Barney Walshes, and that's the trouble. I also think that they were the one thing you can you not say that?
Listen, you can say it. I can't.
Okay, but that's what. And the one thing you can do is try and make it look interesting. I'm always really interested in the visual grammar in terms of the shots they use in this. And they can be incredibly stipulative if they understand the media, the parties. In America, oh my God, they're like, you can't do a split screen with our candidate. You can't do... They've got a load of different ways. And the shots are quite interesting. They didn't do any of that, I've discovered, for the ITV debate. So they let them do what they like. What you really want in those is, like, people think, oh, you want close-ups. Close-ups are fine. And the wides are fine. But what you really want is the two-shot, because the two-shot... And it was in French film criticism, they used to call it the American shot, because in movies they really, you can see how people relate to each other, and that's actually really important, because you want to be able to you want to see if there's a cutaway. In some of the big debates, they have to do it in cutaways, so you see the reactions, and that makes it much more like a play. You have to really quite ham up your reaction. That's why someone like Donald Trump is very good, because he was a reality TV star. He understood that he needed to make big gestures, and then the camera would come to him. And Clinton, actually, Bill, rather than Hillary, really got this. I mean, he was one of the first people to do this. When he had a debate with George Bush Senior, he understood how the cameras were placed. And so he kept manoeuvring himself. So in the background of the shot would be George Bush Senior. And George Bush Senior didn't get this. So he was often shown in the background looking kind of disengaged, or like slightly, just looking at his notes or whatever. Yeah. Every time Clinton was in the background of the shot, and he also, one of the other funny things is he bought his own stools. His team, he bought his own stools. Yeah. Sorry.
I mean, it wasn't the worst of Clinton's crimes in the end, was it? But
I'm so sorry. I didn't fully explain that. The sort of Westlife bar stools that they have.
Gotcha. Yeah.
His team swapped in the stools that they'd been practicing with, their own ones.
Oh, that's clever.
So Ross Perot was tiny and couldn't even get on the stool.
Yeah.
And it was sort of unwieldy. But Clinton was sort of fully relaxed. They've kind of made it his environment. Yeah. That's quite hard to do. And I think most producers would be like, sorry, we didn't...
Sorry, those are not our stools.
We didn't light for these,
Yeah.
Anyhow, so I think those are quite interesting. But basically, the non-verbal of it is really interesting. And people learn so much from how people, you can see when people really hate each other. Yeah. And also you can see how they relate to each other. And obviously they're rivals, but you can get some extension of how they relate to the world from how they actually interact spatially with each other in a shot.
Well, it's very, very interesting, because with both of them, here's the problem. So we were in the same studios, and Sunak and Starmer were both in dressing rooms, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
On my corridor with their teams, and like Labour had 3 rooms, the Tories had 3 rooms, and all day there were like people with guns walking up and down the corridor. There were sniffer dogs. Honestly, been my favourite day ever in a TV studio. I got to stroke a sniffer dog.
Amazing.
Which I didn't think you were supposed to do.
No.
So I was like, the dog came out and the guys with the dog, and I was like, oh, that's a cute one. And I was like, he goes, oh, do you want to stroke him? I was like, yeah, I really do. So no, I got to stroke the sniffer dog. That, again, that's not anything to do with the election. You can listen.
It could have been if something had gone wrong later.
Yes.
You put him off with by touching. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's just say it was a lucky escape.
Yeah, it was a lucky escape. But there'll be more about the sniffer dogs on The Rest is Politics, I'm sure. But we're going to deal with the action. But anyway, there were people all day locked away in rooms talking. And you think, right, what were they planning for? And I know you know plenty of people who plan for debates with candidates. And it's interesting when you've got someone like Starmer or Sunak who, and this is no shade whatsoever, who are not natural charismatic television performers.
No.
By the way, and some of the worst people in the world are natural charismatic television performers. So it's absolutely no shade. But if you are not one of those, then you sort of have to be trained to be one, which you never can be. And so what it does mean when you're talking about those 2 shots and things like that, you are second guessing the way you're reacting all the time, because so many people in the last 2 hours have said, oh no, the thing you must do if he says something, you must like not just, don't move your hands too much. Make sure if he says something that you're allowed to smile, make sure you're the first to leave the podium at the end to shake hands. Your brain is completely full of that stuff. Whereas you have someone like, watching the 7-person thing, I thought there were 3 people on there. As a TV producer, if I was watching, there's 3 people, I think, oh, well, you can come back. We'll book you again on the show. Farage, who we talked about him on I'm a Celebrity, where he's far and away the least charismatic person. And on this stage, he's the most charismatic person. Stephen Flynn, I thought, was good on camera, was charismatic, and Daisy Cooper as well. I thought just had the 3 of them. As a producer, you're thinking, oh, you can come back on the show. Every time I got you can come on because I know I'm going to get stuff out of you. But that thing that people have to be good on television, and therefore we train them up to be good on television, it so rarely works. It sort of worked, and it's the reason people still do it with Thatcher, is they managed to find a confection. They managed to find a personality for Thatcher.
A persona, she had a screen persona.
Yeah, that worked on TV. But it's very, very hard to do. Never worked with Gordon Brown, who you talk to anyone behind the scenes who say what a funny, smart, great guy he is. It never, ever worked for him on television. Whereas Blair just absolutely, TV was, you could see it comes alive when he goes on TV. And that's, that's what some people do. Farage comes alive when the cameras are on, and he does all those reactions. Reagan, I mean,
Reagan did simple things. He went on and shook hands with Carter, and at that stage they didn't really do that in debate. Now everybody sort of shakes hands, so they look like good, but they all do it because Reagan did it. And it was so much harder thereafter for Carter to say, this man's an absolute nutter. How can you just think, how can this affable, nice guy who clearly blindsided Carter by trying to even be friendly, how could he, press the nuclear button or anything like that? So it does work, those little things.
Yeah. And, in the TV producers, version of history, that's the big problem. If you can work on television without someone telling you how to do it, you're at a huge advantage. But most people who can do that are not the people you want running the country. That's the truth of it. And the people who can't do it are trained within an inch of their life, and it makes them worse, I think. Yeah,
makes them buttoned up and hard. That you can almost watch the clouds scudding across the face. They try and work it out.
Yeah, and there's you're watching Sunak, Starmer. Those are both bright guys, but they're just, it's not. We watch a lot of TV.
Yeah,
we are used to watching really, really great sparky people on television. We're used to fluency, we are used to wit, we're used to humor, we're used to body language that feels natural. That's in our DNA as viewers, and we don't get it from those debates, and it does everyone a disservice, I think. What the answer is, I don't know, other than I don't see the point of having the debates.
Yeah. People demand the debates and love the debates. What I find the most odious part of all of it, because we've got such a hard on for American things, is the spin room afterwards.
Yeah.
I have been in the spin room not in these ones, but on all the other elections since we've had them since 2010. And it's literally it's the worst people in the world telling you that what you've just seen on TV didn't happen and you didn't actually see it, and actually something different happened, and this is what it all means. Truly the worst. In America in 2000, I think it was 2004, they call it Spin Alley, but it's so much bigger. And somehow this thing called Triumph, the insult comic dog, infiltrated it. And Triumph was brilliant. Triumph went up to Karl Rove and said, "Oh, yeah, you're Bush's brain. Sorry, I was expecting a smaller man." And then said, and then this Republican, this quite hardcore conservative commentator got halfway down a question about gay marriage that Triumph had asked it, and then said, "Actually, sorry, I don't take questions from dogs." So
this is a man in a dog costume.
Yeah, it's a puppet.
So it's not a talking dog.
Yeah, it's a talking dog, and it was. But I really wish that we could have an infiltrator of that type. You petted a dog, but if you could, anyone could infiltrate these things and just ask them stupid questions, because that is the worst bit, and the way they try and show it live. I cannot stand that, and there's absolutely no benefit to that whatsoever, other than it is content for the news channels.
Yeah, you don't need spin room for Succession or Only Fools and Horses. You don't have someone going. To be fair to Del Boy, actually, someone had opened the hatch on the bar without him looking, so it was not his fault that he fell.
It's actually a health and safety issue.
Health and safety, and so we will be talking to our lawyers. So actually, I think that was a win for Del Boy. But it's I love to watch those things as a producer. There's loads more. There's the individual interviews, which I think is a much better way of dealing with it. I don't want to listen to those two guys arguing. It's just there's no interest. Whereas actually talking to them one-on-one, I think, is interesting. There'll be more stuff with, I think, Ed Davey. There's going to be a question time where I think it's SNP. I think it's John Swinney from SNP, Ed Davey, Sunak and Starmer have half an hour each. And I suspect that Ed Davey will come out rather well from that, because I think he is probably somebody who understands how to behave on television and doesn't need to be told. So I wonder if they'll...
He's certainly game for a laugh. We've watched many of his stunts this election. So he seems more of a natural... I can't actually believe I'm saying about Ed Davey more of a natural performer. Because even so, you are saying that within the class of politicians.
Exactly that.
Yeah.
Like we said before, the most handsome darts player.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, we will be watching the second part of the debate, the Horizon and American Saga Part 2 of that particular debate.
What a lot we've covered today.
We've covered a huge amount, passionately and dispassionately, I hope.
Yeah, haven't we just? Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see everyone for our question and answer session.
See you there.
Bye.